My husband called me that night, like nothing was wrong. He told me he was still at work. "I'm alone," he said. I believed him, until I heard a woman's voice behind him. It was faint at first. Then she said something that made my entire body freeze. "Are you almost done?" I didn't say a word, neither did my husband. There was a long silence, then the call suddenly ended. I called him back. His phone was turned off. I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself there had to be an innocent explanation. But then I remembered something. Earlier that week, I had found a strange access card in his car. It wasn't from his office, and the building printed on it was somewhere I had never heard him mention. The next morning, I asked him one simple question. Who was the woman I heard last night? He looked at me and gave me an answer I knew wasn't the truth, because he wasn't afraid that I heard her. He was afraid I would find out why she was there. Would you confront your partner immediately if you heard another woman's voice, or would you investigate first? It was almost 9 at night when my husband called. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when his name appeared on my phone. Normally, I would have answered without thinking, but that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the way he sounded when I picked up. Tired, distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. "Hey," I said, "are you coming home soon?" There was a short pause. Then he answered, "Not yet, I'm still at work." I asked what was keeping him so late. He laughed quietly, "Just finishing something." I smiled. "Are you alone?" He answered immediately, "Yeah, I'm completely alone." I didn't think much of it, not at first. I started telling him about my day while walking around the kitchen. Then I heard something, a faint sound in the background. I stopped talking. "What was that?" "What?" "I thought I heard someone." He didn't answer. There was another few seconds of silence. Then I heard it again, a woman's voice, faint, almost as if she was standing several feet away from him. I couldn't make out the first words. Then she spoke louder. "Are you almost done?" My heart dropped. I stopped breathing for a moment. My husband didn't respond to her. He didn't explain. He simply went completely silent. "Who was that?" I asked. Still nothing. "Are you there?" Finally, he spoke. His voice had changed. "You must have heard someone on another floor." I looked at the phone. Something about his answer didn't feel right. I knew the sound of his office. I knew the people he worked with. And I knew what an empty office sounded like at 9 o'clock at night. It didn't sound like that. "Can you put her on the phone?" I asked. Another silence. Then he said, "I have to go." The call ended. I stared at the screen. He hadn't said goodbye. He hadn't explained. And for the first time that night, one thought entered my mind. He hadn't been alone. But I didn't know yet who the woman was, and, more importantly, why my husband was lying about her. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the same sentence again. "Are you almost done?" By morning, I had convinced myself there had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe it really was someone on another floor. Maybe I had misunderstood what I heard. So I decided not to accuse my husband. Not yet. Instead, I started paying attention. When he came home that morning, he acted completely normal. He kissed me, asked if I had slept well, then went straight to the shower. I watched him disappear down the hallway, and that's when I remembered the car. The previous afternoon, I had borrowed it to pick up groceries. While looking for an umbrella in the center console, I had found something I didn't recognize.
a small plastic access card. I hadn't thought much about it at the time, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went outside, opened the passenger door, and searched the console again. The card was still there. I picked it up. There was a building logo printed across the front. I recognized the name. It was an office building on the other side of town, but it wasn't his office. I turned the card over. There was a date and a small number printed underneath it. Room 418. My stomach tightened. I took a picture of the card with my phone. Then I heard the garage door open. My husband was coming back outside. I quickly put the card exactly where I had found it. He opened the car door. "What are you doing?" "Looking for my sunglasses," I said. He nodded, but then his eyes moved toward the center console. For a second, neither of us spoke. He reached inside, saw the access card, and immediately closed the compartment. Too quickly. I watched his face. "What's that card for?" He hesitated, then smiled. "It's nothing." Nothing. That word stayed in my mind long after he walked away, because if it was really nothing, why did he look afraid when I asked? That evening, I searched the building address, and what I found made my hands go cold. Room 418 wasn't an office. It was a private meeting room, and someone had reserved it under my husband's name. I stared at the reservation on my phone for what felt like an hour. Room 418, reserved under my husband's name. I wanted to call him. I wanted to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. If I confronted him now, he could simply tell me another story, and I would never know whether it was the truth. So I did something I'd never imagined doing. I drove to the building. It was an old office complex on the edge of downtown. Nothing about it looked suspicious. That almost made it worse. I walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist if room 418 was available. She checked her computer, then looked at me. "Are you with Mr. Carter?" I froze. She had said my husband's name. "No," I answered carefully. "I'm his wife." The receptionist's expression changed, not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. She looked back at her screen, then asked, "Didn't he tell you?" My heart started pounding. "Tell me what?" She hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say anything." I thanked her and turned away, but before I could leave, she called me back. "There was a woman with him yesterday." I stopped. My entire body went cold. "What woman?" "I don't know her name." "What did she look like?" The receptionist described her. Dark hair, late 30s, gray coat, and then she said something that made my stomach drop. "She looked a lot like you." I couldn't speak. For a moment, I wondered if I had heard her correctly. Then I noticed something on the reception desk, a visitor log. I could see my husband's name. Next to it was another name, Emily Carter, my last name, my husband's last name. But I knew that name. It belonged to someone I hadn't thought about in years, my husband's younger sister. The woman he had once told me had died before we ever met. I stared at the name. Suddenly, the voice on the phone made sense. The access card made sense. Room 418 made sense. But one question remained. If his sister was alive, why had my husband spent years telling me she was dead? I drove home without turning on the radio. I couldn't stop thinking about the name in that visitor log. Emily Carter. My husband's sister. The sister he had told me had died 20 years ago. I remembered the conversation. It had happened early in our marriage.
I had asked him about an old family photograph. He had pointed to a young woman standing beside him. "My sister," he had said. When I asked where she was now, his answer had been simple: "She's gone." I never questioned him. Why would I? But now I couldn't stop wondering. Had he meant she was dead, or had he meant something else? When my husband came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room. I didn't mention the building. I didn't mention room 418. I simply asked, "How is your sister?" He stopped walking. His face changed instantly. For several seconds, he just stared at me. Then he said, "What did you just say?" I repeated the question. He slowly put his keys on the table. "Why are you asking about her?" I stood up. "Because I heard a woman's voice last night." He looked away. "And because I found the access card." His jaw tightened. Then I said the name, Emily. He closed his eyes. That was the moment I knew. The lie wasn't new. It had been there for years. He finally sat down, and after a long silence, he told me the truth. Emily wasn't dead. She had been alive the entire time. But years ago, something had happened between her and the rest of his family. Something so painful that everyone had agreed to cut contact. My husband had kept her existence hidden because he was afraid that bringing her back into our lives would reopen an old wound. But that still didn't explain one thing. Why had he met her in room 418? I asked him. He finally looked at me. His eyes were filled with guilt. Then he said, "Because she asked me to help her." Help her with what? He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the table between us. My name was written across the front. I stared at it. It wasn't from Emily. It was addressed to me. And suddenly, I understood why my husband had been so afraid. He hadn't been hiding another woman. He had been hiding something that could change what I believed about my own family. I stared at the envelope on the table. My name was written across it in handwriting I didn't recognize. "What's inside?" My husband didn't answer. He simply pushed the envelope toward me. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Not an old family photograph, a recent one. It showed my husband standing beside Emily outside the same building where they had met. But there was something else, a second photograph. This one was of me, taken from a distance outside our house. I looked at my husband. Why does she have a picture of me? He swallowed hard. Then he finally told me the part he'd been afraid to say. Emily hadn't contacted him because she wanted money. She hadn't returned because she wanted revenge. She had contacted him because she had discovered something about our family. Years earlier, before my husband and I met, Emily had discovered that their father had been hiding a serious financial secret. Money had disappeared, documents had been altered, and one person had been blamed for it: Emily. She had spent years trying to prove she hadn't done it, but the evidence had vanished. Then recently she found a document that changed everything. The person who had actually covered up the missing money was someone connected to my family. I couldn't breathe. What does this have to do with me? My husband looked at me. Everything. He explained that Emily had discovered the connection only weeks earlier.
She didn't know who to trust, so she contacted him secretly. He had been meeting her in room 418 because they were trying to understand what had happened before confronting anyone else. And the reason he lied about being alone, he was afraid that if I knew Emily was alive, I would immediately become involved. He thought he was protecting me, but instead he had made me feel betrayed. I looked down at the photographs again. Then I noticed one final piece of paper inside the envelope, a copy of an old document. At the bottom was a signature. I recognized the name immediately. My father's. My heart sank. For years I believed my family had nothing to do with what happened to Emily. Now I was holding proof that someone I trusted had been part of the secret. I looked at my husband. "You should have told me." His eyes filled with tears. "I know. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to walk away. But then I realized something. He had lied. He had hidden Emily. He had hidden the meetings. He had told me she was dead. But he hadn't been having an affair. He had been trying, badly, to protect me from a truth he thought would destroy my family. And now I had a choice. I could punish him for the lie or ask him to finally tell me everything. I picked up the document and said, "No more secrets," because whatever happened next, I wanted to face the truth with him, not behind him, not without him, with him.
When a lie is meant to protect you. At first, it looked like an affair, a mysterious woman, a secret meeting, a husband who said he was alone when he clearly wasn't. But the truth revealed something more complicated. He wasn't hiding another relationship. He was hiding a problem he believed he could solve by himself. And that's where relationships become complicated. Because sometimes people lie because they want to hurt you, but sometimes they lie because they're afraid the truth will hurt you. Does that make the lie acceptable? Not necessarily, because even when the intention is protection, the result can still be the same. Trust gets damaged. The wife in this story wasn't only hurt because her husband met Emily. She was hurt because he made a decision for her. He decided what she could handle. He decided what she should know. And he decided that keeping her in the dark was better than giving her the truth. But there is another side to the story. What if telling someone the truth could put them in the middle of a dangerous family conflict? What if you genuinely believe you're protecting the person you love? Would you still be wrong for keeping the secret? The real question: is a lie still a betrayal if the intention behind it was to protect someone you love? Maybe the answer isn't simply yes or no. Maybe what matters is what happens after the truth comes out. Do you keep defending the lie, or do you finally say, "I should have trusted you with the truth"? And that's where trust can begin again. Because rebuilding a relationship doesn't start with pretending nothing happened. It starts with no more secrets. The truth wasn't what she feared. There was no affair, no secret lover, no second relationship. But there was still a lie. Her husband had hidden the truth because he believed he was protecting her. And maybe that's the most complicated kind of secret. Because sometimes the person hiding the truth really does love you. But love doesn't give someone the right to decide what you're allowed to know. She could forgive him. She could walk away. Or she could stay, but demand one thing: no more secrets. Because trust isn't rebuilt by saying, "I was only trying to protect you." It's rebuilt when someone finally says, "You deserved the truth. I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to tell you." If you've experienced something similar, you can share your story. No names, no private details, only what you're comfortable sharing. Like if this story made you question the difference between privacy and secrecy. Share this episode with someone who might see the situation differently. Subscribe to Tribal Survival Feast and come back next week for another emotional story where one secret can change everything. Because sometimes the hardest truth isn't what someone did, but why they felt they couldn't tell you. Every secret has a story, and every story has a choice.